In a remarkable breakthrough, the shadows of the past have finally yielded their secrets, as 3 long-standing cold cases have been cracked wide open in the year 2023. After years of relentless investigation, dedicated detectives and cutting-edge forensic techniques have triumphed over the veil of uncertainty, shedding light on these perplexing mysteries. Hi and welcome back to our channel. If you are new here, please consider subscribing, as it helps us motivate to create more intriguing content for you. Let's have a look at the 3 cold cases finally identified in 2023. 1998 John Doe. On October 26, 1998, someone found something scary on the banks of the Columbia River. It rained all day. A body was floating in the water near Lower River Road in Vancouver. This event sent shock waves spread through the area. Authorities rushed to the spot to find out who had died. As they got closer to the body, they could smell rotting flesh, which showed that the man had been in the water for a long time. Since it was not clear who the man was, they carefully pulled his body out of the water and took it away so they could start the hard work of finding out who he was. They did not know that this was the beginning of a puzzle that would keep them busy for years. As the officer of the medical examiner started to do an autopsy on the unknown man's body, a shocking fact came to light. The autopsy showed that he had been shot in the head. But when investigators looked at all the information, they came up with more questions than answers. Had the man committed suicide? Had someone else pulled the trigger? It was still hard to figure out what the truth was. But that was not all. People thought that the man had been in the water for 6 months to a year. Officials had a hard time figuring out what happened before he died. Even though time had passed, the man's age at the time of his death was still known by the medical examiner's office. People thought that he was about 53 years old. These new pieces of information only made the case more of a puzzle. Who was this, and how did he die in such a horrible way? It was hard for the police to figure out what happened to the man, and why he looked so sad. They knew that they had to first find out who he was, which was not easy, because there was no way to tell who the man was when he was found. The cops did not know where to start. In hopes of finding a clue, the cops looked at the records of people who had gone missing in the area. But they found nothing, so they do not know who the bones belonged to. They were desperate for answers, so they told agencies all over the Northwest in the hope that someone, somewhere, would be able to identify the victim. Even though they looked hard, they could not find what they were looking for. Another valuable clue that could have aided the police in identifying the man were his fingerprints. However, because the body had already started to decay, it was not able to undergo that process. As the days turned into weeks, it seemed like there was nowhere left to go with the case. Investigators were getting upset because they still did not know who the man was or why he died at such a young age. He stayed an unknown John Doe, which was scary because it showed how many questions about the case were still unanswered. Despite their relentless efforts, as time passed, fewer people became aware of the case. Time can sometimes help solve cold cases and sometimes hurt them. Even though it may seem like there is less hope every year, new technology and improvements in forensic science can give a case that was once thought to be hopeless a second chance. In 2008, the people looking into the case decided to take another look at the data. They took the most up-to-date tools and methods for investigating to the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification. They were hoping that the changes in DNA profiling would finally help them find the answers they had been looking for so long. The University of North Texas Center for Human Identification was able to do a DNA analysis of the guy by taking samples of his DNA during the autopsy. When detectives saw the DNA profile, they were hopeful, so they sent it right away to the National DNA Database and waited with great anticipation for a match. Even though they worked hard, they could not find a match. The DNA profile gave them a new lead to follow, but it also showed them how hard it can be to solve a case when there are not any clear signs. Still, the cops kept looking. They knew that each new step forward in investigative science made it more likely that the mystery of the man found in the river would be solved. After years of no news about the man with no name, investigators were eager to find out what happened to him. They chose to try something new around 2021. They sent a piece of the body's DNA to Bode Technology in Virginia, which is a well-known forensic DNA lab. Scientists at Bode Technology were excited to take on the job because they knew how to get DNA out of hard samples. They knew that looking at the DNA sample would help them figure out who this mysterious John Doe was. By utilizing DNA extracted from the body parts, a meticulous forensic researcher embarked on a thorough examination of the individual's family tree. Simultaneously, the genealogist conducting the research made a significant discovery: a connection between the family in question and another family residing in California. The researcher looked into the clue and found that it led to one person, the son of Chelsea Johnson Jr. and Ruth Marie Henson. Strangely, no one has seen or heard from this person named Michael Johnson since 1998. The agents knew they had hit the jackpot and were now one step closer to figuring out who the mysterious John Doe was. So, as the leaves fell in October 2022, Nikki Costa, who ran the medical examiner's office, solved the puzzle of the unnamed man. Nikki found two of Chelsea and Ruth Johnson's other children, Russell Johnson and Kathy Bergen. They told her some shocking things. It seems like their brother Michael disappeared without a trace more than 20 years ago and stopped talking to the family. Could this be the missing link that police have been looking for so long? Nikki was keen to figure out who the man with no name was. She never stopped thinking that Michael's DNA might be in the sample. Nikki called a few places to find out if what she thought was true was true. She was determined to find the piece of the story that was still missing. The DNA program for missing people at the California Department of Justice looked at samples from family members. The Wasatch County Sheriff's Office got a sample of Johnson's DNA from his sister, Kathy. In the meantime, the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification sent its 2008 DNA profile to California's Missing People program so that it could be compared to all the other data. The top medical examiner in Clark County, Dr. Martha Burt, finally figured out that the man who could not be found was Michael. Thanks to Nikki's hard work and the work of many groups working together, the man finally had a name and a chance to get justice. Investigators still do not know much about Michael's last days before his body was found, so they do not know much about the strange things that happened before he died. Still, finding out who he was a big step forward in the case and gave the police a place to start trying to figure out what happened. Now, the cops are asking the public for help in the hopes that someone will tell them what happened to Michael. The cops are eager to figure out what happened in this strange case, so they want to know everything they can. Independence John Doe. On June 19, 1970, two young men set out for a stroll along Independence Pass in Twin Lakes, Colorado. It was a beautiful day in the summer. The air was cool and the sun was shining, so it was a great day for a walk. But when they found something terrible, their trip took a turn they did not expect. As they walked down the road, they saw the rotting body of a guy in a ditch on the north side. Rocks that had fallen from the hill above covered some of it, but that was not the worst of it. As the two men got closer, they could see that the left arm and rib cage were missing from the body. It was a terrible sight, and their hearts were beating quickly because they were scared and did not know what to do. The body was wearing a torn sweater and gray pants, and the smell of death was too strong to ignore. Who was he or she? What was his problem? As they stood there in shock over what they had just heard, these questions kept going through their minds. The two guys did not waste a single second before calling the police, who arrived quickly. As they got closer, they thought the dead man was in his early 20s. The cops carefully looked at the scene and wrote down everything that might help them figure out what happened. The police also saw that the man was missing his left arm and rib cage. He also had on 3 pairs of socks and shoes for climbing. Even a sock that was wrapped around his left shoe was found. But they also found some other strange things. They searched the man's pockets and found $7 and a razor. But those things did not tell us much about the man or what happened to him. The man did not have any money or identification with him, so the cops did not know who he was or what had happened to him. Officers also looked all over the area around the body for clues, but they did not find any. The man's body was quickly taken away from the scene of the crime and taken to a lab for analysis, but no matter how hard the cops tried, they could not figure out who he was. They looked at missing person reports, talked to locals, and even looked at tooth records, but nothing seemed to fit. The man was a total mystery, and the more they looked into him, the stranger he became. The way the body was found was strange to the cops. The man looked like he had been out in the weather for a long time, maybe even all winter, but his clothes did not seem right for such harsh weather. The police could not help but wonder what happened to the missing body parts. Were they taken out after they died, or did wild animals eat them? Even though it was a terrible idea, they could not say it was not possible. The cops could only guess what happened until July 15, 1970, when they made a shocking discovery. A state highway worker looked under the road where the body was found more than 3 weeks after the body was found and found the missing limb. The arm and shoulder were bare, but the skin was still on the hand and wrist. The discovery made the puzzle even bigger. How did the limb get there, and why was not it with the rest of the body? The way the body part was found was strange, so the police officers thought it might have been taken after the man died, maybe by a snowplow, but they did not have any proof. Over time, the strange man who was found at Independence Pass became a thing of the past. Because he did not have any ID, he did not have a name, so he was called Independence Pass John Doe. In the Evergreen Cemetery of Leadville, Colorado, the unknown young man was buried with a plain marker that simply stated, "Unidentified male." The case went cold, and as time went on, it looked like no one would ever find out who Independence Pass John Doe was. In 2011, a man named John Pearson, who had spent years cleaning up the Evergreen Cemetery, was cleaning up a rural area when he found the grave of the Independence Pass John Doe. Pearson could not help but wonder who the man was. He had also served in Vietnam. He thought that if John Doe was from Independence Pass, he might also have been in the Vietnam War. Pearson got in touch with Audrey Simpkins, who works for the Colorado Bureau of Investigation as a crime and intelligence expert. Simpkins then asked Sylvia Pedham for help because she knew how to find John and Jane Does. In August 2011, the two of them went to the small town to find out what was going on with the strange grave. Even though they tried, the case went cold again, so for now, no one knows who John Doe from Independence Pass is. After 2 years of nothing happening, the Independence Pass John Doe case started to move forward in 2013. Audrey and Sylvia went back to Leadville to look for the case records, but they were already missing. Together with the coroner at the time, Shannon Kent, they made sure that the details of the case were put into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons Services database. Sylvia then asked the Lake County Sheriff to dig up John Doe's body so that DNA could be taken. With the help of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the body was dug up and a palm was taken. DNA was taken from the chondros femur and the brain at the University of North Texas. This gave people new hope that they could finally figure out who the unknown guy was. But John Doe's body was not laid to rest in his grave at Evergreen Cemetery. Instead, Shannon, the old Lake County coroner, put it in a coffin in his office. After 8 long years, the man was finally buried again. In 2022, when things were calm, the long-running case took a big step forward. A group of cops got John Doe's DNA and sent it to a lab for forensic genetic genealogy testing. We got a good sign from the test. There were still a lot of unknowns about this lead, but it was enough to blow the case wide open. John Doe finally got a name after all these years: Gardner Paul Smith. When his body was found, he was only 39 years old. Gardner was no longer just a body in a grave with no face. He had a family, a name, and a story. He was born in Modesto, California on September 22, 1930. He was the oldest son of Paul and Bernita Smith. His family skied when he was growing up. Gardner's parents both skied, so it was natural for him and his younger brother Armour to do the same. Gardner did not just ski for fun. He did it every day. He went to school at the University of Nevada in Reno, where he not only studied but also was on the ski team. Gardner cared a lot about his sport, and he always tried to improve. He was known to try out new ways of doing things. Once, he even did a big slalom run on cross-country skis to improve his balance. Gardner was a good player, but he was not just that. He was also a deep thinker and an idealist who was always trying to figure out what it meant to really live. In the last part of his life, he became interested in mental experiences and mental skills, and he wanted to figure out how the mind works. He looked into this area of study for a long time. Gardner was young when he joined the Army in June 1951. He was on active duty for 2 years, and then he went to the reserves, where he stayed for another 4. He did his job well, but in June 1957, he lost his job. In 1961, Gardner's road led him to Argentina, where he met the love of his life named Jennifer Dawn Andrews. They decided to get married, and Gardner brought his new wife back to California. Not long after that, on June 18, 1962, they had a girl named Jean, who was their first child. But at some point, Gardner left his wife and young daughter. After Jennifer and Gardner split up in 1968, she married Ernest M. Dillard. Ernest died in 1974, which was sad, and Jennifer became a widow for the second time. On the other hand, after his divorce, Gardner went back and forth between California and Aspen. Gardner's close friend and good ski racer Dick Dorworth remembers the last time he saw him in 1968. Gardner was traveling and trying to tell people about a new ski pole grip he had made. He had other ideas before he came up with this one. He had also made goggles with 2 lenses, but they did not sell. After spending a week sleeping on his friend's couch, Gardner left, and Dorworth never saw him again. In fact, it was revealed that Gardner had sent a message to his mother on November 12, 1969, which marked the final communication anyone had received from him. The message conveyed, "I am fine. Do not worry. Love, Gardner." Although Gardner's mother remained hopeful at the time, little did she know that it would be the last correspondence she would ever receive from her son. Jean, Gardner's daughter, had many questions about her father, who had left when she was a baby. She had no idea where he went, or why he did not come back for years. Her mother and other family members did not say much about her father's absence, so she had to figure out what happened to him on her own. She did not know who her real father was until a long time later, when his real name was found. Jean is keen to show her father the respect he deserves now that she is 60 and has her own family. She wants to give him a small military service and make a headstone to honor him. Jean has not chosen yet where he wants to be buried, but the father she never met will always have a special place in her heart. The death of Gardner Smith is still not clear. Even though there is no record of an autopsy being done on him, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation says there is no evidence of wrongdoing, and there are still stories about how he died. Some people think he may have been a victim of a crime, and that his body was dumped in Independence Pass. Others think he may have walked up there with the plan of going back down, but got caught in a sudden storm, got lost, and died from the cold. But nobody ever found out the truth about Gardner Smith's death, which left a lot of questions open. Etis Thomas C.T. Romero. On November 28, 1992, a group of people near the Walker Wildlife Area off River Road in Colorado witnessed something unusual on a cold day. As they got closer, they were shocked to see that a dead man's body was there without his head. But the man said something even after he had died. He wore green shorts with big black designs and a tan to black pullover shirt with a mysterious mark on the left side of the chest. The sleeves were cut off at the arms. People told the cops, and with their sirens going, they rushed to the scene. As soon as they got there, they started looking around for anything that might help them figure out who the man was. They searched everywhere and turned every stone over. But that did not happen. Even the man's clothes did not tell the cops anything about who he was, leaving them confused. They had no other choice, so they took the body away to do an autopsy and tried to figure out who it was. There, the medical officer did an autopsy on the body, and what he found was shocking. The man had been killed by being cut, so it was clear that it was a murder. People in the town were scared after hearing the news, which sent shockwaves through the town. Who would do something like that, and why? The officers knew they had a lot of work to do, but they were determined to find out what happened. They did not know that the road ahead of them would be full of twists and turns that would lead them down a dark path full of mystery and drama. Detectives started their search for clues with a clear goal in mind, to get closer to solving the mystery. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, it became clear that this was not a regular case. The clues they followed went nowhere, and the trail was hard to follow. They could not figure out why the man's head was not there, and that kept them up at night. Where could it have gone? Was it taken as a prize or put somewhere nobody could find it? The agents wanted to find out what was going on, but they did not have much time. As the months turned into years, the case got colder and colder. People started to forget about the man in green shorts, and it seemed like he would never get what was coming to him. But the spies never gave up, and they knew that one day they would find the truth. As time went on, new technologies came out that were meant to make their jobs easier. In 2011, the case was looked into again, and the National Missing and Unidentified Persons Systems helped. But no matter how hard the spies tried, they could not find anything. Every sign they looked into seemed to lead to nowhere, leaving them with nothing but more questions. Everyone was upset because they did not know if they would ever find out who the man was. But the police never gave up, even as time went on. They knew that new information could always come to light, so they were always on the lookout and never let the case leave their minds. In 2022, the Mesa County Sheriff's Office was motivated to get the man in green shorts the justice he deserved. They would do everything they could to help. They knew that the old ways of investigating had not worked, so they decided to try something different. They called Othram, a company that does forensic DNA analysis, thinking that advanced genetic testing could help them figure out who the man was or find a close relative who could give them important information. Even if it was a long shot, detectives were willing to try anything to solve the case. But modern DNA testing is not cheap, and the police knew they would need money to move forward. So, they went to DNA Solves, a website that uses crowdsourcing, data from people who want to help, and cutting-edge genomics to solve problems that no one else could solve. The money was raised and the tests could start because the agents worked hard and people were nice. Police had been unable to figure out what happened to the bones of the guy in green shorts for almost 30 years. But the incredible progress in investigative science finally let them start putting some of the pieces together. The parts were carefully packaged and sent to Othram's high-tech lab in the Woodlands, Texas. There, a group of smart forensic experts worked hard to get DNA from the bones and make a full genetic analysis of the unknown man. Using a cutting-edge method called forensic-grade genome sequencing, they were able to put together a full DNA code. This showed them something about the man's genes that they had never seen before. It was not enough to just have a DNA profile. The Othram team knew that they needed to use this information to find clues that could help them figure out who the man was, so that is what they did. They were able to find the man's distant cousins and make a full family tree with the help of their in-house genealogy team and investigative genetic genealogy. When the Mesa County Sheriff's Office got this information, they were able to find a possible brother of the unknown guy. By getting a DNA sample from this sibling, the Othram team was able to show that the unnamed man was Edith Thomas Romero. The Mesa County Sheriff's Office made a big step forward when they found out who Edith was. However, his death was still a mystery, so detectives knew they had to dig deeper to find the truth. Edith has changed a lot since he was young, but there are still a lot of secrets about his youth. As police looked into his past, they found that he had always helped other people and given up things for them. One way he showed how brave he was by serving in the military. When Edith died, they found out that he had only been alive for 26 years. In 1991, he and two other guys from Louisiana went to Grand Junction, Colorado. He used to live in a house on 4th Street that is no longer there. He was a cook at a restaurant close. He passed away in the summer of 1992, but very little information was available about the circumstances surrounding his death. Now, the cops need the public's help to figure out what happened to Edith. Please tell the cops right away if you know anything about his sudden death that could help explain it. With each piece of information, we could get closer to the truth. How did this case make you feel? How do you feel about the first look the cops took at the case? In the comments, please tell us what you think.